What you're about to hear happened just last week in a small coffee shop in downtown Portland, and it's a story that will remind you that heroes can appear when you least expect them. Sometimes justice comes from the most unexpected places, and sometimes it takes a famous face to make the world pay attention to what's right. It was a typical rainy Tuesday morning at Brew and Bean, a cozy little coffee shop tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing boutique. The place had that authentic Portland vibe, exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, and the kind of atmosphere that made you want to spend hours writing in your journal or catching up with old friends. Maria Gonzalez, a 67-year-old retired teacher, had just settled into her favorite corner table with a steaming cup of chamomile tea and her worn paperback novel. Maria had been coming to this same coffee shop every Tuesday for the past 3 years, ever since her husband passed away. It had become her weekly ritual, her small way of staying connected to the world outside her quiet apartment. She was a petite woman with silver hair neatly pulled back, wearing a simple blue cardigan that had seen better days but was clean and well-maintained. Her hands, weathered from years of writing on chalkboards and grading papers, carefully turned the pages of her book as she sipped her tea. What Maria didn't know was that sitting just 2 tables away, hunched over a laptop and wearing a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, was Ryan Reynolds. Yes, that Ryan Reynolds. He was in Portland for a quiet weekend, taking a break from the Hollywood chaos, and had stumbled into this little coffee shop hoping to find some peace and maybe work on a script he'd been developing. The trouble started when Marcus, the new day manager, noticed Maria occupying what he considered prime real estate, the large corner table that could seat 4 people. Marcus was in his early 30s, with perfectly styled hair and an attitude that screamed, "I'm too good for this job." He'd only been working at Brew and Bean for 2 weeks, but he'd already made it clear that he intended to upgrade the clientele. Marcus walked over to Maria's table with an expression that made Ryan look up from his laptop. There was something in the young man's posture that immediately put Ryan on alert. "Excuse me, ma'am," Marcus said, his voice dripping with fake politeness. "I'm going to need you to move to a smaller table. This one is reserved for larger parties." Maria looked up, confused. "I'm sorry. I've been sitting at this table every Tuesday for 3 years. There's no reservation sign, and I don't see anyone waiting." "Look, lady," Marcus's facade of politeness began to crack. "We're trying to run a business here, not provide a library for people who nurse 1 cup of tea for 3 hours. Either order something substantial or find somewhere else to camp out." Ryan's fingers stopped typing. He glanced around the coffee shop. It was nearly empty except for Maria, himself, and 2 college students sharing a muffin near the window. There was absolutely no reason this woman needed to move. Maria's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "I always tip well, and I've never caused any trouble." "I don't understand why." "Because you're taking up space that paying customers could use," Marcus interrupted, raising his voice loud enough that everyone in the shop could hear. "This isn't a homeless shelter. If you can't afford to order real food, maybe you should drink your tea at home." The assumption in his words hit like a slap. Marcus had looked at this elderly Latina woman, taken in her modest clothing and single cup of tea, and made a cruel calculation about her worth as a human being. Ryan felt his jaw tighten. He'd grown up in Vancouver with parents who taught him to respect his elders and stand up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. What he was witnessing wasn't just bad customer service, it was discrimination wrapped in economic classism. Maria began gathering her things with shaking hands, her dignity intact but her spirit clearly wounded. "I'm sorry for any inconvenience," she said quietly, though she had nothing to apologize for. That's when Ryan Reynolds made a decision that would change everyone's day. He closed his laptop, stood up, and walked over to Marcus with the kind of confidence that only comes from knowing you're absolutely in the right. "Hey there," Ryan said, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable authority. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation with this lovely lady." Marcus turned, and Ryan watched recognition flicker across his face. The manager's attitude shifted immediately, but not in the way you might expect. Instead of being starstruck, Marcus seemed to puff up with self-importance, as if having a celebrity witness his behavior somehow validated it. "Oh wow, Ryan Reynolds. I'm a huge fan, man. Don't worry about this situation, I'm just trying to maintain standards here, you know. Can't let just anyone take up the good tables." Ryan's expression didn't change, but Maria could see something dangerous flash in his eyes. "Standards," he repeated slowly. "Is that what you call treating a loyal customer like garbage?" "Well, I mean," Marcus stammered, "she's not exactly our target demographic. We're trying to attract a more upscale clientele." Ryan glanced at Maria, who was still standing with her book clutched to her chest, and then back at Marcus. When he spoke again, his voice was loud enough for everyone in the coffee shop to hear clearly. "Let me tell you something about demographics, friend. This woman is a retired teacher. Do you know what that means? It means she spent decades educating kids, probably making a fraction of what she deserved, shaping the minds of future doctors, engineers, artists, and yes, even coffee shop managers." Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but Ryan held up a hand. "I'm not finished. She's been a loyal customer here for 3 years. 3 years. Do you know how rare customer loyalty is? Most businesses would kill for that kind of dedication. And you want to throw it away because she doesn't look wealthy enough for your taste." The two college students had stopped eating and were watching with wide eyes. One of them had her phone out and was clearly recording. Ryan continued, his voice growing stronger. "You know what I see when I look at this lady? I see someone who worked her entire life serving others, someone who found a small comfort in coming here every week, someone who deserves basic human respect regardless of how much money she spends. And you know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who's forgotten that service industry jobs are about serving people, not judging them." Marcus's face had gone from confident to pale. "Mr. Reynolds, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Ryan cut him off. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize to Mrs. Gonzalez," Maria said softly. "Mrs. Gonzalez. You're going to apologize sincerely, and then you're going to bring her a fresh cup of tea and whatever pastry she'd like, on the house. And then you're going to make sure this never happens again to any customer, regardless of what they order or how they look." Marcus glanced around the coffee shop, realizing that several people were now filming the interaction. "Of course, Mr. Reynolds. Mrs. Gonzalez, I sincerely apologize for my behavior. It was completely inappropriate." But Ryan wasn't done. He pulled out his wallet and placed a $100 bill on Maria's table. "Mrs. Gonzalez, this should cover your Tuesday tea dates for the next few months. And if anyone ever treats you with disrespect again, you have my permission to tell them that Ryan Reynolds personally guaranteed your VIP status at this establishment." Maria's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of gratitude, not humiliation. "Thank you," she whispered. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Ryan said gently. "Because if we don't stand up for each other, who will?" He turned back to Marcus, who was still standing there looking shell-shocked. "And you, I suggest you think real hard about why you're in customer service if you don't actually like serving customers. There are plenty of people who would love to have your job and would treat every person who walks through the door with the respect they deserve." The aftermath was swift. Within an hour, someone had posted the video online with the caption, "Ryan Reynolds defends elderly woman from discrimination." By evening, it had been viewed over 2 million times. The coffee shop's owner, who had been out of town, returned immediately and personally apologized to Maria, offering her free coffee for life and promising additional staff training. Marcus was quietly let go the following day. But the real story isn't about a celebrity using his influence, it's about what happened next. Maria and Ryan sat together for the next hour, talking about everything from her years teaching middle school to his experiences growing up in Canada. She told him about her late husband, a mechanic who had fixed cars for half the neighborhood for free when people couldn't afford repairs. He told her about his own parents and how they'd instilled in him the importance of treating everyone with dignity. When Ryan finally had to leave, Maria hugged him goodbye. "You know," she said, "my students used to ask me what a real hero looks like. I always told them heroes don't wear capes, they just do the right thing when no one is watching." Well, Ryan grinned, technically, people were watching. And recording. Maria laughed. Even better. Now the whole world gets to see what a hero looks like. 3 weeks later, Ryan received a letter at his publicist's office. It was from Maria, thanking him again and including a photo of her back at her Tuesday table, surrounded by a group of new friends she'd made at the coffee shop. Apparently, word had spread about the table where Ryan Reynolds stood up for a teacher, and it had become something of a pilgrimage site for people who wanted to pay their respects to both acts of kindness and basic human decency. The letter ended with a line that Ryan had framed and hung in his home office: "Thank you for reminding an old teacher that the lessons we try to pass on about kindness and respect still matter in this world. Sometimes justice comes from unexpected places. Sometimes it takes a celebrity to shine a light on everyday discrimination. But most importantly, sometimes all it takes is one person willing to say, 'This isn't right,' and do something about it." The next time you see someone being treated unfairly, remember Maria and remember that you don't need to be famous to be someone's hero. You just need to be willing to stand up and speak out. Because in the end, that's what heroes really do, they see injustice and refuse to look away. Don't forget to like the videos and subscribe to the channel for more short stories.